Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. Very excited about today's show because we have none other than the managing editor, which translates into big shot, at dietsinreview.com. Brandi, Koskie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Well, thank you again for joining us, Brandi. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, and we can get into this, because first I always want to hear your story, but as the managing editor, I'm too excited. As the managing editor for dietsinreview.com, you see literally every diet in the world. And so you're an interesting person to talk to for that reason alone. But there's a lot of other interesting reasons to talk to you. And let's talk about those first. What led you to the path that you're currently on as managing editor? What drew you to dietsinreview.com?
So Diets in Review started a little over 6 years ago. Our sixth birthday was in February, which is, a long time in web years. So we were really trying to hit that milestone. And so some friends of mine from college, we all went to the University of Oklahoma together. And after graduation, we'd all, kind of went our separate ways and, done a few different things in advertising, marketing, publishing after school. And a few years later, we kind of circled back, and the guys one of our co-founders was actually working at Rodale on the launch of the Biggest Loser branded side of the show, from the publishing side. And from his perspective, he saw this huge hole in the diet industry where there wasn't any one single third-party resource to go to kind of understand more about all these diets and products that were out there in a kind of a trusted, safe environment. And so with kind of all of our marketing background, journalism background, and his background, it was kind of a really perfect fit. And so we thought we would give it a try and create Diets in Review and create kind of the go-to diet review resource for people. It's supposed to be the place you stop and look and shop before you actually go and shop. So you kind of get a clear picture of what you're getting, whether it's one of the big commercial programs or it's the latest fad pill and everything in between. So that's kind of, that's how we got started. And the site, the majority of the first year, the homepage was just links to all of our diet review page. That was the whole of the site. And by the end of that first year and going into the second year, we developed the blog, a recipe channel, the site kind of started growing some legs, and which was nice. Our readership was kind of demanding that. Traffic was, really great, and our readers were kind of demanding more out of it. So it just, kind of grew out from underneath us, and sometimes I think, bigger and more than any of us ever expected. And sometimes I think we got, exactly what we went after. So it's been a really fun ride. It's been a learning experience for all of us, but it's been really enjoyable. And so, today we have people come up and tell us that we're the Wikipedia of diet. So
I love that I love that comparison, because certainly there are so many diets. How many diets are categorized on dietsinreview.com?
We have almost 2,500.
Jeez.
And honestly, that's just the ones we've done. I mean, we get so much stuff sent to us, and we see so much that, we can't do it all. But we try to get the ones that we know people are, actively looking for. If, readers reach out and say, hey, I saw this, what do you think? We'll take some time and, check it out and put the information up for them. So, but yeah, we've got almost 2,500 reviews on the site. So honestly, if you're looking for it, we probably have it.
Well, and what, Brandi, given that you've seen, maybe not personally, maybe you have, I don't know, 2,500 diets. What are some trends you've been seeing? Like 5 years ago, we were seeing this, but today we're seeing this. Have you seen evolution in diets out there?
I feel like I'm really glad to have seen a trend toward, and this will please you, more towards the lifestyle stuff. People really are starting to catch on and bite into that idea that you don't need a 30-day start to finish, open the book, close the book diet. People really are more interested in something that's sustainable, something that they can do for life. That's not to say that people still don't love their quick fix overnight diets, and those are still popular. But when we first started a few years ago, things like acai and Hoodia, those were huge. It was some of the most popular stuff being looked at the site. Low carb was still, we were kind of coming off of low carb, but it was still pretty popular. And now today, I think we're still seeing, like, there's still popular diet pill stuff. Like in the past year, it's been like the raspberry ketone and that sort of stuff. But I think more of the kind of the online commercial plans seem to be doing really well. People are really going after the meal delivery plans, where you get a cooler full of food sent to you and, kind of some of the muss and fuss out of it. More of the stuff that's kind of fitness focused, that's, has a really strong fitness component people are really drawing to, which I think, again, speaks to the lifestyle because, it kind of takes, it's a little bit of everything. So, I think we've seen some positive trends over the last few years toward people wanting to just kind of, quote unquote, do it the right way.
And Brandi, what have you noticed in terms of common denominators for success and also for failure? Meaning, whatever the diet or lifestyle approach might be, if it does this, it tends to work better. And if it does this, it tends to work worse.
I don't think it will come as any surprise to anybody, but I think the stuff that tends to work is when, it's like an all-inclusive look at your health. So, it's not just diet, but it's got that fitness component too. And maybe it's even got an emotional or psychological component because that's just important and often gets completely overlooked in most cases. I think if there's a social aspect, that tends to help. Whether it's a forum on a website or, it's a meeting with a counselor or, it's something that's got, a whole group of you signing up to do something together. But I think that social aspect can be really helpful because, accountability can be so important. And I think the stuff that tends to, fail over and over again are the things that create such harsh limitations where an entire food group is eliminated. And we, like the human brain, we just don't work that well. If you tell us no, it's, it's the one thing that we want. Tell me I can't have bread and pasta and suddenly that's all I crave. But I think the things that, kind of take a moderate approach, they're all inclusive. They really look at the whole person. Those tend to do well. The ones that aren't, ripping you off. And I think people are becoming much more smarter about that and becoming much savvier consumers within this industry. They're becoming, much more careful about giving their credit card to something they saw because a talk show mentioned it. I think they're much more willing to do a little bit of research first and act around. Not to say that, there aren't plenty of people going out and clamoring to buy the first bottle of, green pills they can find because it worked for some celebrity. But again, I think we're just becoming much savvier consumers and we're being much more careful before we just dive right into something.
Brandi, you mentioned a trend that you've seen in terms of ensuring more long-term success being not putting such a tight box around thing. And I'm curious, this is more just your personal opinion of, so often we hear about balance, but balance, like the definition of balance, let me give you a specific example. My father served in the Vietnam War. And in the Vietnam War, when you had an MRE or you had, meals in the field, they came with 2 cigarettes. So breakfast had 2 cigarettes, lunch had 2 cigarettes, and dinner had 2 cigarettes.
Did they really?
Yes. But and
I'm fascinated by this.
But no, and here's what's so fascinating, right? Back then, like, we think that's crazy, but back then that was part of a balanced meal. And if you go to some places in Europe, you always smoke after a good meal. That's an indication that the meal, like, that's part of a balanced meal. Now, the reason I bring that up is because there are substances in the modern diet that are addictive and detrimental. Maybe not to the same extent as cigarettes, but certainly while we don't say, like, no one says you should smoke in moderation. Like, people just say smoking is bad for you. To the extent that you don't smoke, you're healthier. It's not like, well, just smoke in moderation. So how do we, one, balance in many ways is subjective. Like, it was balanced in the 1920s for everyone to smoke, and it's balanced. So like, what is balance? And because it seems a little arbitrary.
I think balance is different for everybody. For me, I can have a Coke a week that I kind of crave a little bit every once in a while, and I'm not going to fall off the wagon and suddenly, become a huge Coke addict. And if I go a week without it, I'm not like obsessing over it. Moderation for me is, I really love bread with my meal. Sometimes, and sometimes it's, just a small piece on the side, or maybe the meal itself is a sandwich, or it's a pita, or whatever. It's a pita on my taco, but I love bread, and I never feel satisfied unless I've had it. But I know that, and so, I'm just smart about it. So, it's not white bread, and I like to make bread when I can, and if I get a tortilla, I find like the best whole grain tortilla made by this little local place. So I think moderation is just a little bit different for everybody. We all have to know what our own limits are. I know that I can't open a bag of Lay's potato chips at all.
There's no moderation there.
I won't stop until I can see the bottom. There's no moderation of potato chips. I know that I can't order a pizza unless there's lots of people around, because I'll eat the whole thing. So yeah, I think that definition of balance and moderation, I think it's important that we teach that idea, but I don't think we try to frame it and tell everybody what that is exactly, because it's different for every single person. All of us have different fitness needs and dietary needs and sleep needs, and for the most part, it conforms to a basic, set of guidelines that we should all try and hit. But, just because I can't go around and tell everybody, get your sugar fix on Tuesday from a Coke. But it's not going to work for everybody else. So yeah, I think the idea of that is very important, but it's different. And I think 5 years from now, what we define as moderation and balance is going to be a little bit different. Just like, so many years ago, having a cigarette after dinner was, apparently government issued.
Brandi, I love your take there for a couple reasons. One, you gave the great example of, for certain things, which you certainly wouldn't want to make the mainstay of your diet, you can dabble in them, and that brings you great joy, and it also doesn't deter you from your goals. And that's great. Like, if that, we're all here to balance. It's all about balance in terms of our goals with health and fitness, but also living life and not being neurotic. And I love that. And I love how you say the onus is really on the individual. Like, you have to figure out what you can do in quote unquote moderation that doesn't detract from your goals. And if you're reaching your goals, if you're at where you're at from a health perspective, where you want to be from a health perspective, and where you want to be from a fitness perspective, and even maybe from an aesthetic perspective, then what you're doing is good. And it's working.
If you feel good, if that works for you, then go with it. One of my least and most favorite things, we do a featured weight loss story every week on the site, and one of my least and most favorite parts of every one of those stories is where we ask the person what their advice is for other people. And I love it because, here's a person who has lost 100, 150 pounds on their own, doing it the right way. They took their time, and, they can tell you, this is what works for me. And some people are going to latch onto that and say, awesome, maybe I'll try that. And so I love that because it's, real people helping other real people find a solution. But I also hate that part of the story because so many people latch onto it and go, like, we have a woman who hula hooped like 120 pounds off of her body. Okay? But not everybody's going to be able to do that. And so my thing is, people read that and they're like, oh, well, shoot, I'm just going to go down and buy this hula hoop and, by Christmas. And it's not going to, it's not going to work the same for them. So I hope that people kind of take those comments in stride. And again, figure out where it's applicable to them. Maybe they incorporate hula hooping into part of what's already working just to mix things up and keep it interesting. But just because this lady lost 120 pounds hula hooping doesn't mean you're going to. Everybody's different.
Brandi, that is a profound point, but it seems obvious, but I promise you it's not, because even myself, I'm sure you do this too, is we find, and I get these questions all the time, someone will say, the most common recently is, how frequently should I eat? And my answer is, well, is what you're currently doing working? Okay, if it is, that's how frequently you should eat. If it's not, then change how frequently you're eating. like it's
right.
There are
my answer is always when you're hungry. Well, eat. I mean, I definitely get caught in that cycle of I look up at the clock and go, oh, it's 12 o'clock. I should go make a sandwich. And I may not even be hungry, but there I am eating the sandwich. Or then, like the past week, I looked at my husband the other night. It was 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I was starving. And we'd had a really good dinner. And it had been that way for 2 or 3 nights in a row. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I seriously want to go in and make myself a plate of food. I'm so hungry. And he's like, well, if you're hungry, then go eat.
Yeah.
I was like, but it's 10 o'clock and I'm going to go to bed. And he's like, who cares? Maybe don't go in and, make a pizza. Don't go in and you thing. But he's like, go eat. And he's right. My body, your body doesn't just tell you it's hungry for no reason. You have to listen to those cues. But you also have to listen to them in the sense that I also know that I've been under an immense amount of stress the last couple of weeks. And so I actually just went in and got myself something really small to snack on and a glass of water. And a few minutes later, I felt fine. Mm-hmm. So you have to just listen to your body because, again, just because this person eats 6 times a day doesn't mean that you need to eat 6 times a day.
Such an important distinction, Brandi, because, and there's a paradox here, right? We talked about there's at least 2,500 diets up on your website, dietsinreview.com. And at the end of the day, it's really about there's actually 7 billion diets, right? And what I mean by that is there's the unique way of living and eating that is optimal for you is optimal for you. I often use an analogy of eyeglasses, where, Brandi, if you and I were walking around and you're like, Jonathan, things are so blurry. And I'm like, oh, Brandi, it's all good. Here, let me give you my glasses. And you put my glasses on and you're like, well, this actually just made it worse. And I'm like, Brandi, you're so ungrateful. I give you my glasses that work so well for me, and here you are. You're ungrateful, clearly. And then you think I'm an idiot because clearly Jonathan doesn't know what he's doing. These glasses are, and it's like, no. It's not that I'm wrong, and it's not that you're ungrateful. It's that those aren't your glasses. They're my glasses. Right. And to be clear.
No, I love that because my husband and I actually have prescriptions that are so similar to each other that if we do end up somewhere and one of us doesn't have them, and it's a situation where I really need your glasses for a second, we can get by for a few minutes. But if I take his after 15 or 20 minutes, I start to get a headache, and I'm like, no, just take them back. It's not even worth it because it is they're not mine, so they're not made for me.
Yep. Well, and similar to the diets you mentioned that you see being successful, certainly there's all human eyes have the same basic underlying biology, and glasses all work in a similar way, but there's still unique characteristics. And that's what I feel like we've got to embrace, those shared characteristics that we know, like nutrient density, whole foods, not being hungry. There are certain characteristics that any successful lifestyle is going to manifest. But then after that, you've got to look to yourself and you've got to listen to your body, like you're saying.
Absolutely. I think celiac and gluten-free is a really great example of this because everybody's, I have to eat gluten-free now. I have to eat gluten-free now. It's like the big fad diet at the moment. And I think so many people, Diets and Review included, were like, no, it's not for everybody. If somebody had, there's a diabetic diet out there, but you don't hear everybody running around trying to do it because it's made for people with this particular illness. It's supposed to treat a disease. And celiac is a very, specific set of circumstances. It treats a very, gluten-free diet treats a very specific allergy, intolerance, however you want to call it. It's not made for everybody. Everybody doesn't have to give up their regular pasta and bread and, whatever else. It's just if you have this disease.
Well, and Brandi, this is a small microcosm of that, and certainly one of the reasons, again, I wanted to have you on the show is the diversity of diets you've seen, and you come in pretty objective. You're not, Brandi, the diet advocate. You are in many ways an objective third party that just provides all of this dietary information, whether or not you think it's good or bad. You're just like, yo, we're a resource. And I try to do something similar with this show where we have people that are paleo, and we have people that are low carb, and we have people that are really high profile vegans, and the thing that sometimes breaks my heart is at the end of the day, we all know the reason that we have an obesity and diabetes epidemic in this country is because we're eating non-food. Like we're eating edible products, right? Like we did not have this problem in the 1950s, and people ate all kinds of stuff, but they ate food. It was all food. The common denominator was it was food, and the rates of obesity were like 3%, and the rates of diabetes were...
They even ate butter. There was a stick of butter on the table every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And they made...
But it was real butter.
Exactly. So, and it's something that just breaks my heart because I was talking with like T. Colin Campbell the other day, guy who wrote the China study, and like so much of what he was saying was actually in violent agreement with individuals who argue with him on the internet. And the agreement is like, yo, just eat food. And if we could all like hold hands and communicate that, because the vast majority of Americans don't do that. Like we still get 40 to 60% of our calories from non-food. So it's just like, just fix that. Like, let's just all...
No, exactly. Our food system is so broken on every level, whether you're talking about GMOs or fake sugars or, deep fried, like, big food. It's the whole system, the whole way through, from the top to the mouth. It's all so broken, and so many people do. And I'm this girl at the grocery store who walks and gawks at people's grocery carts. I just want to stop and go, can I please help you? I trade a few things out, and I have to remind myself that for as prevalent and pervasive as all of this information is, so many people still don't know. And it's not that it's hard, but we've complicated it. We've made it hard. There's nothing complicated about a green bean and a sweet potato and, a piece of fish. There's nothing complicated about that. Where we've complicated it is, putting that sweet potato in a frozen bag with 10 things you can't pronounce and, putting a flashy message on the front and making people think that this is, more convenient, more affordable, and better for you. And that $3 bag of frozen sweet potato fries that has God knows what in it, costs 3 times more than a pound of whole sweet potatoes that you could go home and do any number of things with, and hold those and get more of those nutrients. We've complicated it. We've made it hard for ourselves. But again, I think, like we were talking about the trends at the beginning of the conversation, I think we're finally everybody's kind of starting to come around and realize that, and kind of starting to speak up for ourselves and say, I don't want that in my food. I don't want to eat that. I don't want to drink that. So I think we're kind of starting to police that for ourselves a little bit more.
I love that. Brandi, what do you think is the future? Like if we listen to this podcast 5 years from now, if you could make some predictions for where you think things are going to go, or like the next hot thing, or something that's going to go away, based on all these diets you've seen and all these people you've worked with, what would be your predictions for the future?
I think that we really are going to keep raising our voices a little bit louder and demand that the foods that these companies are making for us is actually good for us. I think that, more and more we're going to, vote with our dollars at the cash register, and, the smaller brands, the healthier brands, the ones that are actually not trying to convince us that Cocoa Krispies are, good for our kids before school. I think, I think we're going to force these brands to actually start making some big changes that are necessary. I think that the whole organic gardening farmers market thing is going to continue to blow up. I think we're going to turn to that as more of a resource. I mean, I live in a pretty urban space, and I know I can name half a dozen people off the top of my head who are gardening. It might just be a pot of tomatoes, which there's an amazing book, side note, called Tomato Land that basically says we could change our whole environmental climate if every person grew their own tomato plant. It's really interesting. Whole other conversation. But I think that, we are going to start, kind of trying to source more of our own food where we can, or, developing those relationships and being, more frequent customers at the farmer's market or a local, working with a local farmer, or those sorts of things, a group of friends co-oping a garden together in a neighborhood. I think that we're going to start doing a lot more of that stuff from both a health perspective, a cost-saving perspective, just a green, earth-friendly perspective. I think that over the next few years, I think some really big star players in the diet industry we'll probably start to lose a few, and some bigger ones will come out, the bigger ones are going to stand out even more, because I don't think those plans are going to go away, and I don't necessarily think that they're all bad. I think that there's a handful that they do get it, and they do work, and they are smart approaches for the people who need that kind of structure and that kind of program. I think that those programs are going to continue to refine to really be much more valuable for the people who are using them.
I love it. Well, certainly many, many insights here, Brandi. And folks, if you want to learn more about Brandi, and if you want to read about 2,500 diet,
if you're bored tomorrow afternoon.
But no, it is.
So the nice thing is you don't have to just start reading one and work your way through. The nice thing is you can go in and search for the one that you want to look at and, check it out and see. And I'll add real quick, I don't know what we're doing here on time, but that our reviews, there's not a bottom line of, yes, it's good, no, it's bad. They're really more profile pieces, and we like to leave it up to the consumer, because, again, just because I think this attribute or, this one leaves fitness out, it may not be a fit for me and I might not like it, but maybe it's exactly what you need. So we try to leave them open to, the consumer's interpretation a little bit. Here's the cold hard facts. You do with that what you need.
Well, I love, because of some of these, there's just so many that having a resource which allows us to you guys take a pretty standard framework. It's like when you go to those sites and you can compare one car to another car. It's very similar.
Yeah, exactly. This one's got an air conditioner. This one doesn't. Whatever you want.
I love it, Brandi. Well, thank you so much for helping to get that objective information out there and for sharing your insights with us today. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Well, thank you, Brandi, and listeners, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. And remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Talk with you soon.
Wait, don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast and if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff, like how to help your kids go sane and just great community content.
And just one last thing before you go, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes and up onto Amazon.com and leaving us a review, and then going over to Facebook and liking us, we would hugely appreciate it.